Now, let us welcome onto the stage Mr. Teo Eng Dee, Chief Executive of the MPA, to give a presentation titled Towards a Smarter and Greener Future of Shipping. Mr. Teo, please.
A very good morning to everyone, and thanks for coming to Singapore for our 18th edition of the Singapore Maritime Week. We have this year more than 10,000 participants coming from 77 countries at last count, and this promises to be a week where everyone can come together, and as you have heard from our Secretary General from the IMO, and later from ILR and ISO as well, that there are many challenges ahead of us, but together I think we can move towards a smarter and greener future for shipping. The Singapore Maritime Week came a bit earlier this year because the Singapore Maritime Foundation celebrated its 20th anniversary. And last Saturday, thanks to Cyril and many others who suggested to have a city cycle, is both sustainable and at the same time, 68 partners from across the maritime sector came together, cycled 10, 20 kilometers, depending on what you wish, on early Saturday morning. Some went further, and we raised $542,000 collectively for the training and the investment into our future talent so that we can bring more talent from across the sectors into Singapore. We also started our very first public days over the weekend, and the picture in the center, as you can see, is probably our first fan or young recruit, which will learn about the future of shipping from young. Many families get to enjoy these new vessels, which we have now brought into play into Singapore post our announcement last year. So last weekend, and also this coming weekend, you can get to see at Marina South Pier and many of the wharves in Singapore, all these new vessels, various visits to our port and other facilities, and hopefully with this, expand the future of maritime into co-opting many fans, friends, and young kids who would want to join this sector and promote its future together. Last year, Maritime Singapore, thanks to the efforts of all our companies here, achieved record results. And in the picture, you have One Olympus coming in December, where we crossed 3 billion gross tons in a year, and also record numbers for container and bunker sales. And I'm glad that we had started 2024 very well with record numbers. These are historically high numbers that we have not seen for a very long time. I know some in the sector may feel that there's always ups and downs in this very cyclical cycle, but at the same time, these numbers reflect the role of Singapore as a catch-up port. We are cognizant of the challenges across many different waterways around the world, but together, I think as a catch-up port, we can help every vessel, every seafarer, every company that requires to catch up and go ahead in your schedules to turn these around. This week, we have talked a lot about these trends. You'll hear about these themes across the various presentations, discussions. But looking ahead, if you were to look at the definition of maritime, and I took this from Merriam-Webster, the English dictionary, on what does maritime mean? It means, according to the dictionary, something that relates to the sea, something that relates to navigation, and more importantly, having the characteristics of a mariner. And that's why the focus on the mariner, the focus on training, the focus on uplifting and upskilling each of our workforce in the maritime sector. For port, it's a place where ships may ride safe from storms, be it geopolitical tensions, difficulties in the supply chains, or mechanical or electrical difficulties. It's also a harbor town and a city, and I'm glad that Singapore was again held in high confidence by our international shipping community. At the same time, it's also a port of entry, meaning the use of good custom clearances, faster turnaround times, and all this translates to lower costs for the consumer, lower costs for the shipping community, and greater opportunities to grow this together. If you look at Singapore explanation, I've used this picture. This is a picture of what we call Nongya Kueh. Kueh is, in our local parlance, cake. And kueh lapis is a layered cake. So in some sense, the shipping sector is moving towards a multi-domain capability. And why a 9-layer cake at some point in time, for those who joined Singapore or came in for the first time, you can catch it, this snack that we take. It's many different layers of rice pudding stacked together. 9 is auspicious for the Chinese. And thus far, I think MPA, together with others, we've managed to identify 6 critical domains that we'll work on. We have left 3 because there may be some emerging domains that may come along the way. But if you look at this for internationalization and digitalization, many tools can be used for application across the sea surface. Many areas can come on board now on the air surface and into upper space, and also the subsea, and with it, cross-sector layers in sustainability and cybersecurity. I'll give you a few examples. First, on the surface domain, where you are very familiar, we are now highlighting different tools on our next-gen vessel traffic management systems. The old system have been used for a long time, and we have selected 3 leading partners to work with us in this test phase to look at what we can do for incorporating the latest vessel traffic avoidance systems in our research universities, ways in which we can get even more vessels to come to Singapore and turn these vessels around if there are issues. So what does it mean for 10% more vessels, 20% more vessels, 30% more vessels? Today, in the latest numbers, we always say that there are 1 vessel coming in or out of the Singapore port every 2 to 3 minutes. In the first quarter, we are operating very closely to 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes, there's a vessel coming in or out. And this helps the international shipping community and the international trade to go forward. We're also looking at just-in-time systems, operating firstly at PSA, and then expanding it to the active anchorages, so that we can then look at more vessels coming in, more effective and efficient bunkering operations. We have also started digital bunkering from last year. This comes at the back of a mandatory form of mass flow meters from 2017. And we have tested these across many different sectors. And digital bunkering reduces the paperwork, reduces the risk to seafarers, and make it more reliant across the whole banking, clearing, legal systems, such that if we ever meet a pandemic again, we'll no longer be passing baskets of goods or papers across the vessels. It also reduces the time and the opportunity cost for the entire shipping community. And we expect this to save about 40,000 man-days per year. We have whitelisted about 4 solutions thus far. We hope that more can come on board. And when the industry is more ready, we will go for a mandate for digital bunkering to be taken in Singapore. And in the air domain, as drones keep coming and technologies become more available, like what Arsenio has mentioned, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Drones are already available, and we are now trying to apply them in the maritime domain. With maritime 5G coming on board, we have now developed a drone traffic management system, no different from how our air traffic management system will work. This is in concert with our Civil Aviation Authority, and we will look towards implementing them in the coming year as more and more 5G stations come on board. With these systems, it means that all drone and drone companies can work very effectively to deliver goods to the vessels. So these could mean, before the vessel comes to Singapore, order a 3D part to be printed from Pelagus and other companies here, or if any of the seafarer were to be sick, you can then arrange a teleconsult from Fullerton and many other medical providers, and the drones can ferry or fly the prescription drugs to you. Of course, there are other ideas that are coming on board, and we hope that one day, Singapore food can be delivered to all the vessels out in the anchorage. And this is what it looks like. Some of these drones flying up. These drones today take off from the Maritime Drone Estate in Marina South Pier. They walk off a station like this, and they land on one of these bulk carriers, both day and also night operations. And the seafarer can pick up the goods. There are ways to do this more securely and in the comfort of our operating centers. So we hope to deliver more of these services and hopefully promote greater use of innovation in this sector. Further up in space, Singapore, together with many other countries, are all launching different satellites. Our research institutes in the National University and the Nanyang Technological University have launch a variety of satellites, and more will do so in the coming year. We are looking at various use cases, and together with ST Geo Insights, MPA, together with ST, have developed a training system to look at how we can use these satellites more effectively. Sometimes for unforeseen circumstances, and I'll give you an example. Last year, around the time of Maritime Week, a Singapore flag vessel was hijacked more than 570 kilometers off the Gulf of Guinea. It's very far away, much further than we can send any emergency or difficult response teams. So we work together with 7 countries in the west coast of Africa, France, UK, China, Korea, Japan, and the US, in looking out for these vessels. And we use satellite imagery together with some local knowledge of what happens in the region, and we managed to find this Singapore flag vessel about 5 days later and return all 20 seafarers, including a Singaporean seafarer, to safety. We hope that this is not a frequent use case of space, but from time to time, when Singapore flag vessels have issues, you can be rest assured that the MPA will support you and work with you to address any incident that may arise. In the subsea, we now have many interesting companies and startups in our national university, and this is an example of BX trying out with this small autonomous robot. It goes 300 meters below the sea, uses 3D sonar and 2D imagery to look at what services they can provide, either in Singapore in terms of checking out the solar farms, or even as far as Rostock in Germany, where they are now doing servicing for many of the wind turbines that are coming out all over the world. So this provides many exciting opportunities for underwater robotics. And just this week, as a co-located event for the Maritime Week, which we hope to do this in future on a more regular basis, ASEAN countries are now competing at the Singapore American School for what will be the best underwater robotic competition. And some of the winning ones will then go on to the US for the competition as well. In the cyber domain, together with the Singapore Shipping Association, we have launched the Cybersecurity Maturity Questionnaire. In some sense, it's like going to a clinic, doing our own self-assessment and self-check. At the same time, we are developing with our local universities a shipboard testing system. So many of the cyber experts from around the ports are here this week doing the cybersecurity exercises. And in future, we can develop the Maritime Cyber Range to do many of these exercises during Singapore Maritime Week. We are also building what we call MAKEO, the Maritime Cyber Assurance and Operational Center, because in Singapore, we believe to do this collectively. There are 11 critical info sectors across the whole of government, spanning from power, water, electricity. And in the maritime space, MPA is also designated as the authority for maritime cybersecurity. And together with our partners, we are now taking in and building these dashboards and real-time systems so that we can address the cyber threats in real time. And you may ask, the flip side of cyber, many of the new areas of AI coming up. I'll show you an example of how we have incorporated AI in the Port of Singapore. We know that for the past few months, many of the Singapore-bound tankers have been diverted because of issues in the Red Sea. So the Maritime AI division within MPA itself wrote these scripts ourselves, and we were able to track daily all the various vessels, be it container, tanker, or bulker, which are diverted and delayed and coming to Singapore, working very closely with our port operators, be it Jurong Port or PSA, to turn around these vessels so that we can work with you, no different from if you are late for a flight, you want to go to the terminal, turn it around faster, catch up for the next flight. And we hope that with the use of more LLMs and AI, we can have much more maritime applications in time to come. This will not be possible without our Pier 71 network. This is our startup network in Singapore for over 5 years now. We have 110 startups. They raised over $65 million. And you can see many of them just down the corridor exhibiting in our exhibition. And there are many startup events for these evenings. We hope that our startups, together with foreign startups in all your respective countries, can work together, deliver new solutions, and use Maritime Singapore and our difficult operating environment, and a challenging one, to test new capabilities and products and services for the international shipping community. So with that, we have also launched our Innovation Lab, and as you can see, Much more youngsters coming into the shipping sector in Singapore, so no need to worry about talent. We are now attracting many graduates, and many of those who are already in the sector, mid-careerists, those who are more experienced, putting their experiences to bear, because this is a multi-generational team working together in these labs to deliver new value for everyone. And having covered digitalization, I'll now cover the other topic on decarbonization and towards greener shipping. We know the climate crisis continues to worsen. You are very familiar with these issues. And if climate change is not addressed, I think the cost of inaction will be far higher than what it is today. And how does 2100 look like? In Singapore, we understand that the various climatic models used globally are very large squares, 250 kilometers by 70 kilometers, much bigger than Singapore. So here what we do is we work with our research institutes to downscale these climatic projections to 8 km by 8 km grids for the region and 2 km by 2 km grids for Singapore. So this is a glimpse of what 2100 may look like if inaction kicks in for decarbonization. And I think we do not want these levels and these numbers to hold true for future generations. And with this, there's a need to look at what we can do in Singapore. We know that the amount of renewables in Singapore will always be limited given our high energy demand, and together with the Energy Market Authority, they have started to look at the future import of electricity through renewables in our neighboring countries. And these are all the various projects that have been launched in the coming years, and we hope that by the 2030s, Singapore, like Europe and many others, will be connected to a renewable energy grid working across the region so that more renewable powers in the various regions can be brought to bear, turning into fluids and liquids if need be, if you need a molecule. So in some sense, the strategy will be to raise the amount of renewables in Singapore where we can, and we know that there will be a natural limit going beyond Singapore, looking at renewable energy projects from around the region and further afield, using the ships as grids to bring molecules into Singapore. So you are very familiar with this multi-fuel transition pathway. We don't know what would be the right answer, but we need all of these fuels. And the good thing is, the more we work together, the earlier we can bring these fuels to bear, much earlier than the various reports. So in Singapore, we are also cognizant of various developments, be it geothermal, geologic hydrogen, or even nuclear. We know many of these options will not be available to Singapore, but we'll continue to work on them, look at the safety aspects, and look at ways in which these can be scaled up globally to support the implementation. And you're very familiar with this GHG strategy. I think Mr. Arsenio from SecGen of IMO has highlighted we have lots of work ahead. Last year, I think many people did not expect the IMO to come into agreement, but after several weeks of intense discussions, I'm very glad that we have worked on the strategy, and now the road ahead, there are 2 steps. For MEPC 82 coming up, Singapore as chair of the Comprehensive Impact Assessment on States, hope to deliver a report that can be accepted by all countries on how these measures may impact countries, and that can form a good basis for the discussion of technical, economic, or a basket of measures. So at the IMO, 2 of our staff who are based there, Han Qiang is vice chair of MEPC, and Derek has helped the IMO to bring together the IMO strategic work plan for the next few years. And in Singapore, I've used this framework last year to highlight what are our domestic efforts for ports, for domestic hovercraft, and also international shipping. And for our ports, for those of you who are working or visiting Tuas Port this week, you would now see that actually our port is much darker than most at night because there are no more workers, they are all back in the control stations, and you actually just use the automated guided vehicles to go around. And with that, we can switch off lights except on the quayside during the night with lots of electricity savings and energy savings, which will improve the competitiveness of the ports. At the same time, our general port at Jurong Port has also installed solar panels across all the available space. It currently already meets 60% of its own needs, and we are working with them to expand the solar coverage even more so that we can reduce our own energy needs within these generalized cargo complexes. In our offshore islands, the top right, you'll see Kusu Island, and even the solar panels are shaped and arranged like tortoises. These are islands in which Singaporeans make pilgrimage to these islands every year. And for the other islands, progressively, one by one, we are looking at whether if they can be powered by renewables instead. Because this would then alleviate the need to bring diesel to the islands every few days. Domestically, you have seen, since our announcement on the hovercraft, much more hovercraft coming in. These 3 are from Penguin, supporting and bringing thousands of workers every day from the mainland to Pulau Bukom. And on the top left, you have Inson looking at their cargo, full electric vessels. And these vessels are all ready during Maritime Week for you to take a look. We have announced last year that from 2030, all new hovercraft coming to Singapore will be fully electric, running on B100, or capable of using biofuels and be compatible with what we call net zero fuel. It does not mean that on the 1st of January 2031, we expect everyone to run 100% on biofuels. What we mean is that for all new hovercraft to take into account all these technologies so that there will be minimized risk on stranded assets, and we can reduce the regulatory risk to the minimum for these vessels. And progressively, as the existing stocks improve, the emissions of the whole sector will come down. And to support the sector, we know that the energy demand for bunker tankers, pleasure craft, and tugboats are far higher, and we will run more pilots on these vessels before more announcements are made. And to support the industry, we are looking at developing and proportioning the different types of risks. So we will also learn this week from many of our IEP members from the International Advisory Panel on Maritime that there are various risks involved in this journey. But together, I think we can work on these together. So for instance, MPA and the government shoulder the regulatory risks together with the IMO and others. Our operators shoulder the operational risks. The technology providers can work on the technology risks. And finally, our bankers can look at the credit risks to reduce all of these to bring the sector towards a more sustainable path. So to this end, we've launched 3 expressions of interest for the design of hovercraft, for pilot trials of electrical charging infrastructure, and also the financing of them. So the first one, we have received 55 proposals, and thanks to the evaluation committee from industry, from academia, we have chosen 11 concepts to be further refined. You can take this to be the vintage 2024, and every few years when we do this, more designs will come on board. Our research universities and institutes are now working very hard with these designs to reduce their energy efficiency. We hope that with TCOMs and many support from our university, we can improve their energy efficiency by more than 5 to 10%. And with this, when these designs are rolled out, their total cost of ownership can be even lower than the existing conventional hovercraft. For charging, we have tried 3 concepts to be developed. The first one has already been implemented at Marina South Pier, and we will roll out the next 2 on megawatt charging and also a mobile charger out at sea pretty soon. And this week, we will also launch our technical reference for electrical charging, for industry consultation, and we hope that many of these new standards will be available and implemented from next year. On the financing, these are the results where we received 19 good very proposals from all our banks in Singapore. So there are some on direct financing. We've onboarded all of them, and also to bring on board these banks to the new government scheme together with Enterprise Singapore. Under the Enterprise Financing Scheme Green, government will shoulder about 70% of the risk share for many of these new technologies, and MPA will look at type approvals for many of these new energy efficiency technologies. On the alternative financing side of the house, many interesting proposals. We will go for a round 2 before we select the best model going forward. And then on insurance, there are very good proposals by 7 leading insurers in Singapore, and the net result is that the insurance costs for the new electric hovercraft will be no different from that of the conventional hovercraft, and we hope to extend this to international shipping as we go along. So for biofuels, I know many of you are trying biofuels. We've dropped in good use of biofuels. The standards in the IMO allow up to B30, and in Singapore, we allow up to B50 at this moment. We are working very hard with our research institutes for standards up to B100. And with these, we hope that more options could be available to the Singapore maritime industry. And next on to international shipping. We know that all the new fuels are less energy dense, and that would mean that efficiency is critical. Mr. Arsenio spoke about energy efficiency and the use of wind. So beyond the wind wings and the rotor sails, we have a very new plane or craft. It's actually a vessel. The wind and ground effect was used by British pilots coming back from mainland Europe during the World War, and they were flying very low to use the wind and ground effect. But for many years now, the equations leading up to the wind and ground effect had some issues, and thankfully to some mathematicians in Singapore, they managed to find quite some new improvements to it, and ST Engineering is working very hard to bring these airfish to fruition. You can see one of the earlier models, a few walk down this hall, and we hope that in a few months' time, this wind and ground aircraft will be testing in Singapore waters. These craft fly at 70 to 100 knots, so it's a small stretch that we will have to cater for them. But we hope that these would also support many of the delivery of passengers and also emergency-related personnel as and when needed to the different islands in different parts of the world. And we know that the best molecule to bring will be hydrogen, but hydrogen is at minus 253 degrees Celsius or minus 423 Fahrenheit for those who use the Fahrenheit system. It's a very difficult molecule to handle, and we are still at the stage working with the Suiso Frontier, and we will launch a new project in Singapore in the second half of the year to look at some of the technical standards relating to hydrogen. We don't think that that will be as commercially viable in the near term, but many of the work to make it available in time has to start now. And for the other molecules that Mr. Arsenio has highlighted, for methanol, we are more ready. Last year, we conducted the world's first methanol bunkering. This is the lower left picture that you have with the Lollarmus and MT Agility from Hong Lam. It was at 300 tons last year. This year, I'm glad to say that in the next few months, we will work on thousands of tons being transferred, and also at the same time, simultaneous bunkering of methanol with cargo in our PSA terminals. And with this will complete almost the whole set of technical standards and capability development that is required for methanol. And on the right side, you have seen all these real-time models that are now being developed by our research institutes so that we can be ready for real-time bunkering of these fuels. In the bottom right, you see some of these pictures. Because methanol, you can't see the fire, so we use some of these drones to fly and also inform the vessels if there are issues. So you're not working on this alone. The Port of Singapore will work very closely with all our shipping community to introduce these new vessels safely and bunker them very efficiently in our port. And then we will share these lessons with many of our partners. On supply, we know that this is a perennial question being asked. So we have received 50 proposals now for the methanol supply EOI. We are looking at a new licensing framework for methanol. So new licenses will be issued to applicants by the end of this year. And we hope that the bunkering standards for methanol can be published by 2025. So essentially, for methanol, pretty much at the scale that is required so that we can also be in time for the IMO target. Next, for ammonia. This is a much more difficult molecule to work on. The FFI vessel in the top left is on display now at Keppel. Rest assured, we have debunkered it, and there's no ammonia on board when you visit it. But over the past 7 weeks in February and March, we tested and burned 3 tons of ammonia together with diesel as a marine fuel. And we've developed quite a lot of good understanding, good models, which we will continue to work on them and enhance them as we prepare for ammonia bunkering at scale in Singapore. And for our national project, together with the Energy Market Authority, where I co-chair the Ammonia Working Group, we have announced a national project for 50 to 60 megawatts of ammonia direct burning of fuel, and also for power generation, 50 to 60 megawatts of this power plant, which will be built. 26 proposals were submitted, and after a very rigorous round, we have shortlisted to 6. These 6 have, in the local partners, submitted their scripts, and we are now marking them. And from these, we hope to shortlist a few finalists by which we can then select a final developer for this project for both power generation and also bunkering by the first quarter of next year. And in that project, we've also asked for the source countries of these production plants for ammonia. So on the map here, you can see the 8 countries which can potentially supply ammonia into the region. And today, we will issue the RFI for the freight and insurance component of these transport of ammonia. All shipping companies in Singapore are welcome to participate, and we welcome you to have the returns by the 17th of May, so that the returns can also be incorporated in the evaluation of the final developer. So this is not done, as we said, in Singapore alone. We have many green and digital shipping corridor partners, starting from Rotterdam, and then last year we added the port of LA and Long Beach, and late last year the port of Tianjin in China, 6 ports in Japan, and just recently Australia as well. We are discussing many more green and digital shipping corridors, and through these corridors, we'll bring more partners on board, work with them collectively, and together go on a common path towards digitalization, cybersecurity, and decarbonization. And you see many of them this week. I'll just take a snapshot of the various groups that are assembled here this week: the Silk Alliance, the C40, UNTAC, and the Zero Emission Shipping Mission, which will announce their result, I think, later today. And also many international agencies such as the IEA. And I'm very glad that with our colleagues from the IEA has decided to start its first regional office outside of Paris in Singapore, and it'll be set up by the second half of the year. And today we'll be entering into an MOU with the IEA, so that on the maritime and the maritime energy aspects, MPA will also be partnering the IEA to bring about these new fuels and discussions into bear to the international circuit. So just early this week, you have seen our effort to develop the maritime training facility. And these harks back at the core of the definition of maritime, where the mariner is at the center of much of our work. During COVID, we were very lucky to have worked with many of you to develop good procedures, which were then adopted in many ports around the world for crew change during COVID. So during COVID, 400,000 seafarers and professionals had their crew change in Singapore. And we are glad that on the back of this, we found that actually Singapore can be a place to support the international community in the training, be it in electrification, cybersecurity, digital, or in the new fuels. And we've brought on board 23 global partners, all the 5 major engine makers, and also our tripartite partners from the associations, SSA and many others, international shipping associations, and all our local unions. So together with this tripartite effort, we hope to develop a range of research facilities and training facilities. Many of them are already available. You'll be visiting many of them. And progressively, when we develop more and more training facilities by 2026, we hope that this will benefit tens of thousands of seafarers and maritime professionals who will come through Singapore and will work with our regional partners to scale these efforts up. So this would not have been possible without the support from every one of you. And I will assure you that at MPA, together with our tripartite partners, we'll work very hard on this voyage together with you and with all our international associations and organizations, such that we can address these collective twin challenges of digitalization and decarbonization. And with that, I thank every one of you for coming to Singapore. And as always, enjoy the food, the sounds, and the good spirits in the networking sessions for the remainder of the week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Teo. Let's give another round of applause for Mr. Teo as he makes his way back to his seat. Mr. Teo, may I kindly invite you to take your seat at this juncture? Thank you.